Welcome, everyone. My name is Charlie McCauley, and I am a co-pastor at the Commons Church here in Flagstaff. And on behalf of the family, I want to welcome all of you for joining us today for this celebration of life and memorial of Zach. I know the family is honored by your presence, and we're grateful to share this holy time together of remembrance. Let us pray. God, we gather today with heavy hearts, and I am so grateful that you are with us when we suffer. And I pray that you make us aware of your presence today as we remember and as we cry and laugh. We thank you for your grace and unconditional love. We thank you most of all for dreaming up Zach, and thank you that so many of us in so many different ways have been touched by Zach's life. In Jesus' name, amen. I wanted to briefly welcome you, but I've been meeting with the family this week of Zach, and I know that this moment is, many funerals and memorials are, it's something that we dread and also wait for expectantly. And I first of all want you to all know that you're so welcome here in this place. Everyone's welcome here, no matter where you come from or what your connection to Zach is. And I do believe as a pastor that these are very holy times. When we gather together, especially in memory of those that we love, it seems to strip away some of the inauthenticity and kind of gets us to the real, and it also connects us to love. And I'm just really, really grateful that you're here. The family has asked me to share an opening verse of scripture with you, and I'm just going to reference it in John 13:34, when Jesus says, love one another as I have loved you. Love one another. And I think that's going to be a theme of our time as we gather today, is love for sure. But in my experience, one of the practices of gathering to remember those that we love is an act of loving one another. It's an act of loving Zach. We believe that in some mystical and mysterious way in which we don't understand, Zach still is, and our love for Zach still is. And we gather today to love Zach. And we also gather today to love one another. Because when tragedy befalls us, such as this, it's a different sort of pain. It's a different sort of life experience, and we need each other. We were never meant to do this alone. And so we gather today to love one another and to love Zach. We're going to also open right now with a very special welcome directly from the family. Zach's brother, Elliot, is going to share a message and also a welcome on behalf of the family. Elliot, if you want to.
Hello, as Charlie said, I'm Elliot. I'm Zach's brother, and on behalf of our family, we wanted to thank everybody for coming today and for their support during this time. There have been so many donations, flowers, food, small gatherings, cards, hugs, and it does help. I see my parents and Jen, Zach's wife, and they're just astonished by how many people have wanted to help. There are so many things we want to tell you about Zach, but first we want to be open about how Zach left us, because staying silent is part of the reason these tragedies keep occurring. On Monday, August 8th, Zach left his house in the afternoon. He told his wife, Jen, he was going grocery shopping. Wasn't unusual for Zach to do something and not stay in contact. He was kind of goofy like that, but a few hours later we realized something might be wrong. He was eventually reported missing. The next day, his blue truck was finally spotted from the air. sitting on a trail in the National Forest. Zach was found soon after at the bottom of a small canyon, just off a small cliff, just a short walk from his truck. He did die by suicide. He did not suffer. The area was beautiful, it was quiet, and it was peaceful. And the ride out there gives you some time to ponder and think about life. But in the end, it took just one bullet to end his life, and it altered and devastated so many other lives. While healthcare professionals may dedicate their lives to others, are also notorious for not taking care of themselves, especially physicians. On average, more than one physician takes his or her own life every day, and some studies indicate almost half of EM physicians admit they are uncomfortable seeking treatment for mental health. Zach may have feared appearing vulnerable and burdening other people with his emotions, yet ironically, he infinitely burdened us with guilt, confusion, and regret by the suicide. Zach's death and our suffering may have been prevented if he had been able to seek help. Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Never feel like you can't come to a friend, a family member, or a professional for help. During your weakest moments, remember you have a strong community to brace you. We ask those taking on difficult tasks, our healthcare professionals, our first responders, our soldiers, our veterans, and any individual traversing this complicated world. If you are feeling like hurting yourself or you're depressed, please seek help. Do not let Zach's death or any of those before him be in vain. Lastly, there was incredible participation by everyone when Zach went missing. We want to thank our first responders, search and rescue teams, family, friends, everyone, in their combined effort. We could not believe how quickly and efficiently the community came together to help us find him so quickly. I know this isn't everybody in this room, but I'd like you to stand if you were out there looking for Zach, driving or hiking through the forest, looking for his truck in town, making phone calls, searching for him in any way. If you did, please stand. We want to look at all of you and recognize you for what you've done. And we thank you so much. And we thank everyone for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. I met with the Stamile family and all of Zach's family last Saturday, and a picture began to emerge of this smiling face that stands behind me. And one of the things that I heard them say immediately about Zach is that Zach was a very authentic and real person and didn't have a lot of room for nonsense or fraudulent things. And I also think that he loved nature, and I can think of seeing something beautiful in nature, maybe if you're with a group of people and you see a sunrise or a sunset, and you can sit in silence, and that beauty has its own power. And sometimes you can say to the person next to you and acknowledge how beautiful that thing of beauty, that sunset, is. And I just want to say to us collectively here that we're watching something of beauty here in love. Thank you, Elliot, and for your whole family, for choosing in your own time of grief to love this community by telling the truth and being authentic about what happened with Zach, who is so beloved. And having spoken a lot to the family, I want to follow that inspiration and lead and be a little more authentic and real than maybe you might find at some religious ceremonies, and talk about some hard things. Because religion is a strange thing. It's a force multiplier. It can be a great evil or a great good, like the internet or money or anything like that. But when we talk about death by suicide, which most of us in this room, even before today, have been touched by, there are theological questions that come up. And today we're going to talk about love, and then we're going to just talk about Zach like crazy. But we also want to talk a little bit about God. There's a really bad idea about God out there. And I've heard it my whole life, and you probably have too, that someone who dies by suicide might be punished by God or go to hell. And this may be a strange thing to say, but I want to tell you as strongly as I possibly can that that's not true. It's not true in any theology of any Christian church or the religions of the world. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God, is what it says in 1 John 4. God is love, is what it says. Whoever lives in love lives in God. And that is a radically big, beautiful, inclusive statement. And I don't fully understand, none of us do. I will be authentic. We don't know what happens after death, but I believe with all of my heart that Zach is wrapped up fully in the love of God and experiencing a freedom from a pain that maybe we didn't fully understand. And the only hell that we're dealing with is the hell that we're in here left behind. And we need language like that. We need language like hell to talk about war and abuse and violence and death by suicide and suffering. Zach's not there. Zach is cherished in the beloved arms of a God who is love. And I wanted to start it there just to honor what I've learned about Zach, that there really isn't much room for nonsense. We just need to be real about the things that we're feeling and questioning. And I also want to be available if any of you have questions about that afterwards. Please come talk to me, because I would give my life to this truth that you are loved perfectly and unconditionally in the same way that Zach was. Now, for me, one of the greatest joys of Zach living on in multiple mysterious ways is seeing and hearing about Zach from you. And today we're going to get the great privilege of hearing from those of you close enough in order to honor Zach's life. I get the picture that this is someone, the phrase I hear more than anything is larger than life. And I think that smile just feels like it's hovering over me back there. But every story I hear is about a person whose relational skills, their way of being, and their energy in life was one of those unique individuals that brightens every room. Rosa shared that he was a bright bulb, a light bulb, and a light. And Rosa, Zach's mother, also asked me to share, and I think this is very beautiful, a reflection on the very life of Christ and Christ's mother, Mary, from a very personal place. She was reflecting on the beautiful statue in St. Peter's Basilica in Rome of Mary holding the crucified Christ and the grieving mother. In the conversation she wanted to bring to this community that art reminded her of, and also the human story in the life of Christ, was the very fact that the idea that Jesus of Nazareth was some sort of embodiment of love or a picture of perfection was also true mainly in the humanity of Christ. And there is a connection, and I believe this to be theologically true, that a lot of bad ideas about God are about the cross. And a lot of people don't understand that in Christian theology, one of the most central things that makes us tell this story over and over again for 2,000 years is the idea that something about God suffers with us. And Jesus was also a human, and Mary was a human, and she lost her son in a violent death, her nonviolent son. And there's something in that humanity that is, in fact, divine, that we can think about and process together in the central truth of the co-suffering of God, that as we suffer, that is when we know God is nearest. And because of that truth, I also know that very last moment of Zach's life, for whatever mysterious reasons that none of us may know, there was suffering, and God was there. And that gives us peace. And that suffering has ended. And And now we have each other to process and suffer. And I think the holy way to do that is to remember Zach. I hear that he was a paradox and a contradiction. I hear that he was crudely humor at the perfect time. I heard that he was the most unkempt pretty boy that ever existed. There's this picture that emerges of a person who is hard to sum up in one service. And so that's why we're just beginning a conversation today of grieving together and telling stories. I'm going to close with this last thought and then get to the most important part of hearing from those of you the closest to Zach. I've been haunted almost by this anecdote that I heard years ago, and I don't even know if I can confirm that it was truly about Maya Angelou, the great African-American poet laureate. I heard a story that she was being interviewed one day, and they asked her, what makes you a great poet? Did you study in school, or are you just naturally gifted at it? And she said, no. The reason I'm a great poet is because when I was a little girl and I walked into the living room, my dad's eyes lit up. And I thought that was such a powerful anecdote about the way humanity is and the way love is. And when I heard Peter talking the other day about his time with his little boy, his son, that his life lit up even as recently as the last times they were together, I know that Zach was someone who experienced parents whose eyes lit up when he came in the room. And I also know that Zach was the type of person whose eyes lit up when he talked to patients, when he came in and said, my name is Zach, and when he introduced himself, and when he hung out with nurses and other doctors. Everything I'm hearing is of someone whose eyes lit up, and I don't think we fully have the words to describe exactly what that means, but we feel it when we're in the presence of it. And Zach clearly had that sort of life that impacted so many in this room. And then finally, I believe God's eyes lit up when Zach came home a week ago. And that love, that unconditional, perfect love that can never be outsinned, it can never be broken, is the foundation we sit on today as we gather together and remember Zach. I'm going to say a prayer, and then we're going to have a time of reflection and remembrances from those closest to Zach before I come up and close us out. We're grateful for the hope of love, God. We're grateful that as people for thousands of years have wrestled with how to speak of you, the phrase God is love has become truth, that you are love. You are the love in between us. You're the love in us. You're the love in our humanity. You're the love in the paradoxes of who we are. Let us rest in that today as we celebrate and laugh and cry and mourn. Let us rest in your perfect love. In Jesus' name, amen.
Good afternoon. My name is Elena. Zach was a dear friend of mine and also my biggest rival for Chucky's love and affection. Mackie and I are going to read Rosa's words about Zach's beautiful life. Zachary Peter Stamile was born to Peter and Rosa Stamile in Tulsa, Oklahoma on March 8, 1983. He was the oldest of 4 children, having a brother, Elliot, and little sisters, Susanna and Tessa. His family lived a few years in Tulsa, then moved to the country to an acreage in rural Oklahoma. They lived in an old, tiny house, painted sunflower yellow, surrounded by hay fields, growing crops, horses and cows, dairy farms, and oddly enough, many Amish neighbors. His young years were spent outside playing, swimming, and commanding his younger siblings, always the leader of their daily games. I am the oldest, was a daily statement. Zach was healthy, inquisitive, curious, ridiculously loud, and a handful to manage. He loved Legos as a very little boy, long before they were cool, and spent hours making many intricate scenes with them. He also loved dinosaurs, Disney, and action movies, and all things nature. His life was full of not only his family, but cats and dogs, pet chickens, rabbits, horses, and more than a few snakes, turtles, and lizards. Zach discovered computers and video games as a preteen and became a huge fan of them, an interest he never lost. Zach attended the small local school in a nearby town and was an excellent and energetic student. He was popular and quickly developed a huge group of friends, or his buddies, as he always called them. He liked team sports, loving the competition and camaraderie, and played a little soccer, then baseball and football. Charming and always a favorite with the ladies, he seemed to always have a girlfriend. Zach started working about age 15, initially saving money for his first car, and he never stopped working, only taking a break in later years to attend medical school. After high school, Zach attended a small university in Tahlequah near his home, Northeastern State University. He started there planning to major in computer science, but quickly transitioned to the biological sciences with his eyes on medical school. As always, he was a strong student and excelled. He was a member of Lambda Chi and loved the fun, friendship, and parties that came with it. He worked hard and played hard, which was his pattern for life. Near the end of his college years, he met Jennifer Hart and fell hard for her, loving her only and never wanting another. Soon after graduation, they married in her hometown church on May 26, 2007, and soon after moved to Oklahoma City so Zach could start medical school at Oklahoma University. He was funded by an Indian health grant for which he was eternally grateful. Jen worked while he studied, but eventually she decided to change her career path and start nursing school while Zach studied on. They graduated and trekked cross-country to Orlando, Florida, where Zach started a 3-year ER residency and Jen began working as a nurse. Both blossomed in Florida, working hard and transitioning from nervous newbies to a skilled, savvy doctor and nurse. During his time in Florida, Zach was named Teaching Resident of the Year, always happy to share and help those who wanted to learn. He was proud and excited about his depth of knowledge and ever-improving skills. Finishing residency, Zach owed 4 years of his professional life to the U.S. government and Indian nations as payback for his medical school. Considering the 3 to 4 Indian health slots available, he stumbled unaware into Flagstaff and was instantly in love with its pine trees, surrounding peaks, and drop-dead scenery. He phoned his mother during that visit with such excitement and glee, he could barely explain the beauty. Again, trekking across country with Jennifer in a U-Haul, they moved to Flagstaff, where Jen worked in the local hospital, and Zach took his first position as an ER doctor at Tuba City. He quickly learned the way of the Navajo and Hopi Indians who lived on the res, becoming adept at caring for them, rescuing them, patching and sewing their wounds, saving their lives. Zach had come from humble beginnings, but their extreme poverty was beyond anything he had ever witnessed. As always, Zach found good friends in the hospital and developed deep bonds with a group that endured during the remainder of his days. They worked together and played together, with some getting married, having children, and growing salty at their chosen professions. They vacationed together, explored Arizona and Utah, made visits to Vegas that involved way too much alcohol, and went on a long hiking trip through Switzerland. Zach's younger brother, Elliot, came to visit and quickly made plans to move nearby, seeing the beauty of the area, feeling the draw of Zach. Elliot and his beloved Amy moved to Flagstaff, followed by his sister, Tess, just out of ER residency. Finally, his other sister and her family, as well as mother and father, left Oklahoma and moved to Flagstaff to live near one another and see each other regularly, something they hadn't done for many years. Zach's professional life continued on, shifting to an Apache reservation to work and starting a successful side business of physicians to staff ERs on the reservation. He worked long, difficult hours and slept when he could, driving back and forth to come home to see his wife, dogs, friends, and family.
The COVID pandemic struck his reservation and was horrendous, wiping out his Indian patients, taking entire families, and showing no mercy. Somehow he survived that, developing deep wounds over his ears from his mask and even deeper wounds in his caring soul. He resuscitated patients by the side of the road, in the hallway, and called out-of-state hospitals requesting they accept his transfers. Finally, the pandemic eased off and his life in the ER became more routine again. We will never know if Zach's soul ever recovered from that difficult time, although outwardly He seemed to have done so. Zach worked on. He was involved in 2 startup businesses that were successful, allowing him to learn the business world. For those who did not know Zach well, he could be described as a walking contradiction. He was complex, yet simple. Wise, far beyond his years, but always wanting to learn. Reading constantly, providing trivia, details, obscure information to his family and friends. He could be gentle and kind, wanting to be the first to hold his sister's new baby, yet rowdy, rough, and boisterous, chasing the other kids through the house screaming. He openly loved his nephews and niece, his friends' kids, his cousins' kids, becoming uncle to so many, but having no children of his own. Zach loved roaring monsters in movies and a tiny weenie dog he carried under his shirt who shook, had a bad back, and offensive breath. He complained and even ridiculed the reservation, but brought home a deserted dog from the res, Mr. Cash, bringing part of the res home to live with him. Zach was big in size, inside and out, but he loved his tiny wife. He liked greasy, salty, fast food. Let's go to Sonic. But taught himself to cook and was honing his skills in the kitchen and with his new find, a smoker. Zach could discuss eating a cheese burrito in the same sentence with his plans for making a Chateaubriand. He could whip out a lengthy recipe after reading it once, but his sister often wondered if he even knew how to correctly spell her name, as he sent messages with it misspelled. He was vain and stressed about losing his hair, but often unkempt. He was proud of his profession and his salary, which was beyond anything he ever imagined, was generous with his money, but checked his accounts closely, and was terrified of the stock market. He hated the thought of growing old and his change in appearance, but regularly told his aging mother he thought her wrinkles were not noticeable. Zach made fun of everyone, tormenting his father about politics, and took no prisoners, but was first to bravely defend anyone being unjustly attacked. Lastly, Zach was open and brazen, yet revealed his deepest secrets, his fears, his pains, to virtually no one, except occasionally his lifelong confidant, his brother. He was not at all religious, but was spiritual, and told his mother he knew there had to be a higher power. The list of his contradictions go on and on. Zach's heritage was a little unusual. He was half Italian on his father's side, only 2 generations gone from Italy, and from his mother, 764th Chickasaw, with a mixture of Northeastern European ancestors. Just for the record, Chickasaws were known to be fierce and cunning warriors, not to be trifled with. I think he was proud of that. He wanted to find out which Indian clan our forefathers had belonged to. Maybe he imagined himself riding a spotted pony, wearing war paint, and blazing through a field of flowers to defeat the enemy. Zach died this month on August 8th, although his body was found on August 9th. He was 39 years old and died by his own hand in a canyon near his home. Zach's choice of place of great natural beauty where the quiet was the loudest noise. He left us without saying goodbye, just like he usually left his family gatherings, just suddenly walking out the door or saying he was using the restroom, but then found asleep in his niece's princess bed hours later. Goodbyes must have been hard for Zach, too. Too final, not fun, not joyful. His death has been horrific and left those who loved him struggling, bleeding on the insides themselves. It is something his big family, his wife, his friends will never understand. It was not his style, not his way. There's a big hole left in the world, now in a space that Zach occupied and roared through. The world was a much better place with this big guy, with his heart of gold and his fabulous mind, the warrior spirit, $1,000,000 smile, pack mule endurance, and laughter that filled the room, filled the universe. He'd be so proud if you remembered him that way. Please pray for peace and healing for his wife and family and friends. There are so many suffering his loss, but he would want us to be happy again. That was his way.
name is Corinne Walker.
I'm Tom Grossheider.
Thank you everyone who has come to celebrate Zachary Stamile today. As you can see by how many people are in the room, Zach touched many lives. Tom and I both met Zach through work. We started our careers in Tuba City in 2014 after graduating from residency. Zach moved from Orlando, Tom from Philadelphia, and I from Tucson. We were all new to Northern Arizona and Tuba City, which created a unique situation in which we began to build our friendship.
In fact, not only did we work together, but we also lived together. Due to the fact that we worked 12-hour shifts, sometimes 13 or 14, depending on how the shift went, it was nearly impossible for us to drive back and forth from Tuba City to Flagstaff every day. Zach, Corinne, and I decided to rent a hospital house, and we became roommates.
And when you live with someone, you really, really, really get to know them. We quickly learned Zach's quirks. There were a few things you immediately noticed in the house that made you aware Zach was home. As you opened the front door, an Arctic blast of 55-degree air would hit your face. Every light in the house was on, like you were in a casino, because while Zach knew how to turn on a light, he didn't know how to turn it off. He moved around the house with the grace of a wounded water buffalo, stomping from the front door to the bathroom. His presence was unmistakable. His favorite way to relax was to play online video games while screaming unrepeatable profanities, likely to a terrified teenager in Iowa.
Really unrepeatable. Unrepeatable.
These were his quirks, and we loved them, because this is how we knew Zach was home. Like everyone here knows, his personality was gigantic, and it filled the entire house.
If you were home with Zach, it meant that you would likely be on shift with him in the ER as well. As many of us here today know, Zach was a brilliant physician. Listening to him dictate on Dragon was like listening to a cattle auctioneer. He talked faster than I could think. He was the smartest doctor that I knew. His knowledge was encyclopedic, and his speed was a sight to behold. Zach was a gifted teacher because he had a deep confidence in his skills. He often figured out the answers before I figured out the first question to ask. It was a combination that made him a gifted teacher. All the staff knew that even if you had the most rudimentary question, you could ask him, and he would not make you feel dumb. He never condescended. His codes were masterful to the point of artistry. Not only was Zach brilliant in terms of his medical knowledge, but he also seemed to have mastered the art of medicine. In Tuba, our main ER has 5 rooms that you can see from the doctor's charting area, so you could watch and hear your colleagues interact with patients. You could tell they adored him. He was empathetic, a patient advocate, and more often than not, when he walked out of a room, both he and the patient were laughing. He would then beeline back to the charting area and would click, 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 click in this really characteristic way with his mouse hundreds of times. He would highlight every single lab value as they came in, and he'd chug these enormous, grotesque energy drinks, whatever he was drinking. Anytime he was stuck or lost in thought, he would twirl his hair. It was thick and long and beautiful, and he was so proud of it. Jen hated it. He started growing it out immediately after he got to Tuba. After Tessa started, Zach's sister, for those who don't know, she started as an ER doctor in Tuba. We realized that it was a family quirk, the Stamile mark of deep concentration. Watching them unknowingly twirl their hair at the same time while they were both deep in thought made you know they were related. It was uncanny.
The staff always looked forward to working with Zach. They knew it was going to be a fun shift, that there would be jokes, and likely some junk food. Zach would regularly buy the ER staff lunch or dinner. He frequently gave his credit card to one of our staff members we lovingly nicknamed our Little Spicy Nugget, who would shop at Bash's and bring back a buffet of food for the whole department, all on Zach. This generosity carried over as roommates as well. In fact, we would always ask him how much we owed for our utility bills, and he would just say, "Don't worry about it." And no matter how much we tried, he wouldn't let us pay.
And if you were lucky enough to be Zach's roommate like we were, at the end of a shift, we would walk home together from the ER. We would spend our evenings talking to each other's families on speakerphone. We would talk amongst each other about work, life, travel, and aspirations. It was a great way to decompress. As you know, Zach had many friends and people that wanted to be around him. I felt lucky to be his roommate because it was guaranteed time that you got to hang out with him. After working together, living together, and spending free time together, Zach quickly became not just a friend, but like our family.
Zach was like our brother. He was genuine, brilliant, selfless, giving, and supportive. We loved him. The next time you come home and someone has left a light on, take a moment to think of Zach and everything we lost when he left us, but most importantly, everything he gave us when he was here.
Hello there. Nice to see everyone. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Wiley. Zach was my coworker, business partner, moral compass, mentor, private comedian, ally, living medical textbook, confidant, and most importantly, one of my best friends. It is my honor to celebrate Zach Stamile. As a disclaimer, before I continue, I just want to let everyone know that if you get uncomfortable seeing my cry, I don't care. I spent hours staring at sample eulogies online, trying to figure out what I'm going to say here today. I just couldn't find anything to do Zach justice. His presence was too honest, too humorous, too pure, too great to be summed up by cliches. So instead, in his honor, I put together some miscellaneous ramblings about what Zach meant to me. At any given time throughout the last several years, I kept a running mental list of things I must discuss with Zach. Sometimes there was something that came up and it was downright imperative that Zach and I discuss before I proceeded with my life. Despite the title, the list contained absolutely no topics of consequence or important. I searched for the mundane, the absurd, the ridiculous. So when I go through my more recent memories of conversations, they include things like a politician's love affair, a strange interaction with a patient, whether or not chewing tobacco is good for humanity, paid time off policies, the country of Australia, what's on Vladimir Putin's mind. These are things that rarely, if ever, affected me personally. I just always appreciated Zach's opinion, his humor, his uncanny insight into the minds of the incompetent, his general view of the world. To the outside of the world, 97% of our interactions must have looked like the musings of bumbling clowns. It was nonsensical and often unintelligible speech in non-linear order expressed with urgency and at a ridiculously high volume. Zach was the kind of guy that I could spend hours discussing absolutely nothing at all, and always at the end, I would leave elated, smiling ear to ear. It's a friendship that I'll never be able to recreate. We knew each other inside and out. There was so much mutual respect. I was so unguarded around Zach. In addition to all that, Zach was a rock. As an emergency physician, I've never seen him sweat. I'm convinced that if an asteroid the size of Texas was heading for Earth and the imminent extinction of humanity and all other earthly life was inevitable, I would have chosen to be around Zach. When everything about the situation seemed hopeless, Zach could have had everyone around him laughing. I would get so excited to work a shift with him or to see his name on caller ID. I miss that feeling, that certainty that today is going to be a good day. It's ironic that when something was backwards or when the world seemed upside down, Zach helped me make sense of it all. Over these last 10 days, the person I want to help put this all together for me, to add humor when all I see is bleakness, whose name I want to see on my caller ID is Zach. I am a better human in so many ways because Zach was in my life. Zach was the glue that held this whole group together. I miss him so much. Goodbye, Zach.
All right, Ken, good luck following that. Thanks, Wiley. It's amazing to see this community here. I knew the effect and the gravity that Zach had in many of our lives, but just to see how many people come together to honor his name, it's truly special. Like me, I'm sure you never imagined that you'd have to be here in a time like this for a reason like this, and I certainly never thought that I'd have to be giving this speech for Zach. If I had to give a speech, I think it would probably be, to the bail bondsmen in Vegas, once Chucky, Dom, and I and Wiley had a hand. Maybe it would be for an acceptance speech at a chicken wing eating contest that he happened to have won. But all the same, I'm here and I'm honored to be speaking about him, my friend. For those that don't know me, my name is Ken Bernard. I'm Zach Stamile's most handsome and brilliant and eloquent. I'm sorry, that was a rough draft. I'm the pompous, arrogant, self-involved, and overly ambitious one. At least that's what he would tell me. That's what he would try to teach me about myself on a regular basis, and he was almost always right. I was trying to be like him, selfless, generous, affable, not to take myself too seriously, but it was still really hard. I felt like he had so much more to show me. To the Stamile family and Jen, thank you for sharing Zach with us. And although probably a small consolation, Zach was our family. So by extension, you have gained a ragtag group of imperfect and broken, but utterly devoted aunts, uncles, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters. I apologize for which one of us is going to hit you up for money first, but my money's on Chucky, to be honest. My friend would know that I lack the words and grace, and therefore had to borrow a few from the greats, Walt Whitman and Seneca, to be more exact. He was my colleague, business partner, mentor, friend, and as I said, he was my brother. As a colleague, Whitman had said, "I no doubt deserve my enemies, but I don't believe I deserve my friends." I don't think I ever deserved somebody like Zach to come into my life. When I first started out at Tuba, my wife and Kelly were also going across country. Of course, as it would happen, the U-Haul was taken 37 years. None of this stuff got here, so I didn't have scrubs, I didn't have a stethoscope, all the stuff that I needed in order to be great. On my first day, I didn't have it. So I sent an email out to the team, bashfully and embarrassingly asking them if I could borrow some stuff. He was the first one to reply. Literally, his first communication to me was to give me his clothes off his back, and then to invite me to play PS4. As a clinician, he was the best of us. We lost a great one. Seneca wrote, "People pay the doctor for his trouble, but for his kindness, they will remain in his debt." There are so many communities that will remain in Zach's debt for his kindness and his compassion, his fearlessness. And as Wiley was saying, you'd see him on the schedule and you could do nothing but smile because you knew you were going to have a great day. You knew you were going to be able to take care of patients regardless of the challenges and barriers, of which there were many. But as long as you had him, you knew you were going to be okay. He is the standard to which I will hold myself and every other clinician I work with. We will fall astonishingly short, but we will try. As a friend, a few years ago, I had a personal and professional setback. Some of you obviously were a part of that. And despite my, what I thought to be unexhaustible energy and optimism, there was a hole I could not dig myself out of. There was a darkness that was there that I couldn't recognize and I couldn't talk about. And Zach knew it, because I couldn't answer his calls and I didn't want to talk to him. and I didn't want to talk to a lot of my wonderful colleagues who were here. But he knew the best way to reach me through Mike Kelly. So he calls my wife and he leaves a voice message and says, "I love you, buddy. I know this is a dark time, but it's going to be okay." I, for the life of me, will never know why he didn't grant me the same opportunity. And I assume it's because what others said is because he didn't want to be a burden. The joke's on you, buddy. I think from here, what I promise and what I will do in his honor is to rededicate myself to those people in my life that mean most to me, to make sure that I'm enjoying every moment that I have on this earth, because you never know when the next one is going to come. And I guess I'll leave with another great one from Walt Whitman. When it comes to taking myself too seriously or analyzing a situation too deeply, especially in the presence of people that I love, I will just say, we were together, and I just forget the rest. I really do appreciate you allowing me to share a few words about my dear friend. I'll never forget him, and I'll always love him. And thank you. Take care.
All right. Before I get started, I just want everybody to know that this speech is rated P for poop joke. There's one poop joke in there. Vetted by Zach's family. They said he wanted it in there, so it's going to be in there. Okay, here we go. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chucky. I've been one of Zach's friends for the better part of the last 10 years, and he's been one of my best friends almost as soon as I met him. We've saved lives together, hiked the Alps together, bought samurai swords together, lived as roommates in White River, and mostly just acted like laughing idiots when we were around each other, and I loved every minute of it. Our bromance was strong, probably because we acted like two adult children together. We had the kind of boyhood friendship and love as grown adults that I don't think I could have ever experienced with anyone else, and I don't think I ever will again. I remember Zach. I remember when we were hiking in the Alps, and we were in the middle of nowhere, in this huge valley full of rock debris, and Zach had to take a huge dump. He went behind a big rock and did his business, and I remember him coming back, and he was so proud and so excited of how big it was that we took a picture of it that I still have to this day. We may have even named it, I can't remember, but this is just how we were together. Two man boys laughing at a literal poop joke. I've never laughed so much or so hard around another person, and I think Zach is second only to Elena for the amount of hugs I've given and received by another person. I believe I have the honor, and it is a true honor, of being the first one banned from sleeping over at Zach's house because we kept Jen up at night constantly with our inappropriate jokes and banter. Love you, Jen. Thanks for putting up with us. Despite that, Jen respected that, and she and Elena were always able to kind of watch Zach and I just act like idiots together and just be Zach and Chucky together. I first met Zach at a get-together before we started in Tuba City. I remember seeing this big guy, spiked short hair, and a kind of fruity, very bright shirt on. Way fruitier than this, though. And I think he had a goatee and probably a puka necklace. And I thought to myself, did a band member from Creed just go to medical school? Who the frick is this guy? And I found out very quickly, oh, this guy's a bro, but not the douchey kind. And we've been bros, and really in my mind, brothers ever since. Zach has always been one of the most kind and inviting people I've ever met. I've never seen him be mean to anyone. He really did live his life by the golden rule. I've never met anyone that met Zach that didn't have something nice to say about him. He was always the life of the party. And you knew that if he was at the party already because you could hear him like 3 miles back. The biggest regret I have about my time with Zach is that I never asked him how he was doing, how he was really doing. Zach time was always laughing and fun, and we never really talked about the stuff that was bothering us. Like typical men, we never really talked about our feelings. Zach and I had so much in common, and unfortunately, one of those things was keeping our feelings to ourselves. Of course, now it's easy to say that I regret not asking him how he felt, but I think one thing that he would support in all this is that we need to get better at communicating. We need to be more comfortable with asking each other how we're feeling and not just how we're doing. We need to recognize that it's not a form of strength, a form of weakness, it's a form of strength. Zach, every time I think of you, which is going to be a lot, I'll always picture you mid-laugh. I'm sure the universe will recycle your constant laughter or thunder, let me do that again. I'm sure that the universe will recycle your constant laughing as thunder or some other loud-ass noise, because it was truly a force of nature. Zach, I'll be listening for you every time it's raining. Love you, brother.
Afternoon. My name is Dominic Maggio. I've been friends with Zach for the same duration as everybody else. I've been a colleague with him for the entirety of my career. I want to touch for just a minute on the event that brought us here. And I think everyone's just as shocked as I am. And effectively what this has taught me is that I don't think we're going to have answers as to why we got here. But it also kind of highlights the fact that I don't understand this illness. And all that means is that you don't know where people are, and it's impossible to tell. So if there's a lesson from this, it's just be gentle to each other. That's what I take out of this. And then just a kind of word of guidance is that there's always someone to call, all right? You're never alone. Just make the call. I don't think this event defines Zach for me in any way, shape, or form. After spending hours and hours talking to you all and sharing stories and drinking late in the night, talking about Zach, I think the one thing that really defined him was his laughter. So I wanted to share that with you, if you would. Did you do it one more? I'm sure it's been a while since some of you have heard that. It's been a while since I've heard that. Zach was generous with that. Oftentimes I was reflecting on it, and he would greet you with it. It was a greeting, like nothing was necessarily even funny. It was just you walk in and he's just laughing, like Chucky was talking about. He was lighthearted, he was carefree, he was loud, he was raunchy. And I've been amazed at the references to like Saharan animals in this. I called him a wildebeest in the emergency department. When things would get busy, he'd just like turn in his chair and just like tear all the papers off the wall. And if you ever saw him run a code, you just felt bad for the housekeeping staff afterwards, But he was like just echoing everybody else. He was the most astute physician I knew. And he's who I aspired to be. He was thoughtful and calm and deliberate, and I never saw him backed in a corner. And it'd be very rare for some of you to have not felt him rescue you at some point in time from a sticky situation. He was invaluable to the IHS. He was invaluable to the Southwest region. He inspired some of you to come here to the IHS, and he inspired many of us to stay. Zach was also family, okay? He was Uncle Zach to me. I have 3 kids. Unprompted, he was the first one to welcome us to Tuba as a family. We were the first ones with babies to show up at Tuba. It was like a singles party when we showed up. Now there's tons of kids. Unprompted takes my kid out to ice cream. Unprompted takes my kids out to the toy store. And if there wasn't a kid on Zach's shoulders when he walked in the room, it was just the fact that he hadn't been there long enough. But I think when I think back when I reflect as to this kind of contradiction that I love that the family brought up, is I think the times that really impressed me most about Zach being thoughtful and deep and complicated were when I saw him face a crisis. Many of us have gone through occupational crises over the course of our career in one way or another. And at times, Zach was leading those crises, and I was always impressed at how thoughtful he was, accepting my concerns or other people's concerns, reflecting on them, and then seeking compromise, seeking to honor, and really vindicate someone else's positions. I use that advice to this day. One of my favorite poets, his name is Wallace Stevens. He wrote a poem called Sunday Morning. It's essentially a reflection on finding spirituality in day-to-day things. In it, he wrote a line that says that death is the mother of beauty. I think that if you look around you, you understand that his point was that the only reason why we value things is because they're finite. And this room is a testament to that. It's a testament to us appreciating what we have and being grateful. And I know that I'll be appreciating Zach for learning how to live lightly, learning how to live gently, and learning how to be thoughtful. So with that, I miss you, bud.
Hey there, I'm Tessa Stamile. I'm Zach's sister, the youngest of us four. So communication is not my strength, including speeches, and this one will probably be the toughest one I've ever given and likely will ever give. I've always had a difficult time with words growing up, and when I was little, I pretty much relied on Zach and my other siblings to translate because strangers couldn't actually ever understand me. And Zach, to this day, mocked my speech, and would like to shout out the sound that the Tasmanian Devil cartoon did growing up. So you're all aware of Zach's beautiful life story, his accomplishments, undying love for family and friends, and dedication to his craft, and pretty much all the amazing things he was. But me and my siblings were blessed to be privy to a side of Zach that you guys may not be familiar with. A side that was loving, brotherly, crude, unabashful, and least expected, fashionable, or really not fashionable at all. Him and I had an interesting sibling relationship. He made sure as kids we always knew he was the eldest and really cast a large shadow over us. But then when we grew up, I chose to constantly follow in that shadow. He's one of the main reasons I became a physician in emergency medicine, and the sole reason I was aware of and likely accepted into the residency for emergency medicine, which we both attended. At one point during my residency, I told my attendings that they should just go ahead and build a statue of him at the hospital if they liked him so much and leave me alone. So after residency, I completed emergency medicine. I moved to the same town as Zach, where then I worked at the same hospital as Zach, where he could finally fulfill his destiny and not only being the eldest, but my actual boss. But he made a great boss and continued my mentor and confidant in medicine and life. Just a few weeks ago, I called him upset about a case, and all he said was, "Well, let's hear it." He was always there for me when he needed to be. He was a great brother, and I didn't tell him that enough. You knew Zach loved you if he harassed you, and the more the better. Him and my brother Elliot created lifelong nicknames for other people. Zach usually called me Me Gusta, founded on my vanity. He bestowed the nicknames Haggard, Henry, and Charles, most recently, onto Jen throughout the years. And more than once, people have confusingly asked who Charles is during a conversation. When things got serious with my current boyfriend, Mo, I knew Zach had accepted him when the jokes started. His favorite joke was screaming obnoxious, fairly offensive phrases at him in Arabic over the phone. The only problem is, Mo is Pakistani, and he actually doesn't speak any Arabic at all. And I had to tell Zach that several times. So, Zach's harassment hadn't always been fun and games to us, though we now have laughed about for several years. He early on learned to be a leader, including devising a servitude ticket process for all of us in order to buy playtime with his toys, mainly his dinosaurs. I at one point was made to run to the barn in the dark and back to buy my time with his toys, Zach knowing that the dark was my greatest fear. On pool days when him and my brother must have him bored, they trapped my sister and I in the pool alone and liked to sing the suspenseful Jaw movie song at us. Zach didn't lose his devious touch after all these years and took a lot of joy in riling up our father about politics, then either recording him or just setting the phone down on mute to laugh and listen. Zach went through sun tanning outside with oil, frosted tips, seashell necklaces, and more recently, camo cargo shorts. He was heartbroken when I told him that they weren't in style anymore, and he never wore that pair again, though I discovered he apparently had several others in his closet. Afterwards, he willingly participated in a Nordstrom trunk club delivery with me, modeling his clothes after each shipment. We both learned that we had awkward thighs and hips that are nearly impossible to fit. And Zach's eating habits, like mine, likely contributed to his healthy curves. One of the few shifts we worked together in Gallup, New Mexico over the past few years, we decided to go to dinner and Zach picked the restaurant. There were a few excellent restaurants actually in town, but Zach chose Carl's Jr., CJ's as he liked to call it, and we sat inside to make it classy. He had also really honed his cooking skills over the past few years. It was known for making buttery, good food with lots of meat, but then leaving a tornado in the kitchen. One of the strangest feelings since Zach's death has been during family gatherings and even family text messages. It still feels like I'm just waiting on Zach to show up from a stretch of days at work, or for him to actually pick up his phone while playing computer games. But then I abruptly realized that he isn't going to come home, at least not in the form that we would like to have known him in, and we aren't going to hear him laugh or talk again in this life, unless it's through a recording. Yet I have this odd feeling, especially when it's quiet, that he is still here. My mother recently told me that she didn't know how to answer people when they asked how many children she has. And I told her she should answer 4, because that's how many of us there will always be. Even if Zach isn't in his usual, loud, slightly stinky form we prefer, there will always be 4 of us. I don't think we'll ever stop being sad or questioning the reasons behind this. However, we are comforted to know the suffering he had is gone, and he has returned to laughing obnoxiously loud and being the center of the party. We love you, Zach, and we'll always remember you.
My name is Susanna. I'm Zach's sister, the one whose name he could never spell right. Though I did look back through emails, and he did actually spell it right once 15 years ago, so I think maybe he knew how. My brother, if you couldn't tell from all of these stories that I knew we would hear today, was incredibly funny. There's a charge nurse somewhere here in the audience, I think, that emailed me the other day and said that she would always just think of him as a meat lover's, pizza-eating Clydesdale in the department, and I just, that made me laugh so much, wherever you are, whoever said that. As the oldest of 4, he felt it was his God-given duty to keep us amused, whether we liked it or not. At 8, along with his usual accomplice, Elliot, he placed my Barbie, smothered in mustard and ketchup naked, into the microwave for a full minute, to my horror. At 10, he was habitually ruining every game of Summer Monopoly when he got tired of it by cheating as the banker and licking all of the board pieces and money before flipping the board and strolling off. Upon his discovery of girls as a teenager, God help us, we were all amused to find him frequently sunning on our front porch, as Tessa mentioned, slathered in baby oil. At 16, the terror that was my brother was unleashed upon the open road. Annoyed that he was forced to take me home from school one day, he drove over 80 miles an hour down the highway. I'm sorry, Mom. Windows open, rap blaring, and my hair was slapping me in the face with such force that I vowed to never again ask him for her ride, which I think was his motivation all along. He was the clown 10 days before he even left us. He laughed to death when I had to call him and tell him my husband had sliced his foot open on the table, and he said, "Don't take him to the ER, I'm gonna stitch him up." He came over and stitched my husband up, and when he was leaving, he opened our fridge and stole a bag of pepperoni that was unopened and said, "This is my payment." At 19, something seemed to have changed in Zach. I think he felt nostalgic when he left home, God bless him, for the first time, and he would write me emails from college telling me how he loved and missed both me and my sister. I remember the day he called and told me about his beautiful new girlfriend, Jen. He emailed me shortly after and told me he wanted to propose and was trying to pick a ring for her. Ever the protector, it took him 10 years to accept and begin to love my husband, Kyle. He was vicious towards him for a good 12 years and would only refer to him as coffee shop. But once accepted into his circle, my brother was a fiercely, fiercely loyal person. He tied the bow. Sorry. Zach tied the bow on my wedding dress. He loved my 3 children. His favorite game to play with them was called Souls. He would chase my children, screaming and almost crying around the house, screaming, "I'm going to get your soul." And I had to explain to my 3-year-old what a soul was because Zach wouldn't. We almost lost our second baby to sepsis when he was 10 days old, and Zach would call me constantly across the country, patiently explaining lab work, drips, diagnostics to me, the hysterical parent alone in the emergency department in PICU. Our little boy survived, and God was good to make him the spitting image of my brother. When another family disaster struck, Zach again called me and said, "You need to think long and hard about how you're going to provide for your kids. You need a plan if something happens to your husband." I had studied the humanities for almost a decade. To his glee, let me tell you, he thought it was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. But it wasn't until he said that I decided I did need to refocus my studies. And I gained a degree in nursing, and I hope to one day work alongside him in the ER. With his encouragement and support, I did become an RN. I had 2 shifts in the ER with him here at FMC, and I will always remember those 2 precious nights. He was constantly joking with me, and at one point he looked at me and he said, "Do you know what end tidal is, Susanna? This patient needs to be on end tidal. Do you know where the end tidal is?" And I also heard him barging around the nurses' station, yelling at the hospitalist, "I got 5 more for you." He always used to joke with me about how useless he thought my humanities degrees were. But last year, he told me that he thought the language and literature that I had studied, Italian, was beautiful, and that he often wished he had been given the chance to travel like I had. There's a particular piece of Italian literature that I have found myself constantly thinking of on the very day that I learned he had taken his life. All Italian children grow up learning about Dante's Divine Comedy, which is not a comedy at all, a medieval epic poem that is a kind of Bible to Italy. It begins with famous lines almost every Italian knows by heart. In honor of Zach and our Italian heritage, I would like to read them to you. Nel mezzo del cammino di nostra vita, mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la dritta via era sparita. Ah, quanto a dir qual era e cosa dura, esta selva selvaggia e aspra e forte, che nel pensiero rinnova la paura. The pilgrim and writer speaks of finding himself midway through life at the age of 35, lost and alone in a dark forest, immobilized by his fear and his suffering. But just as it looks that all hope is lost, he is saved by one of his own heroes, Virgil, a Roman poet. Virgil saves Dante, but for true salvation, Dante is forced to pass through the inferno, hell, confronting his past and present before climbing Mount Purgatory and meeting the souls who are attempting to atone for their many sins. And in the final book, he enters Paradiso, heaven. He is surprised to find that it is not a throne with God, seated high above, and his subjects below him. Instead, Dante describes a beautiful rose, and all the blessed souls make up the petals of that rose. At its center is a light, at once so beautiful and awe-inspiring that words finally fail the great poet. He feels himself a part of this vision and is overcome by God's love, calling it l'amor che muove il sole e le altre stelle, a love that is able to move the sun and the other stars. I am certain that my brother has, like the poet, left that dark wood of fear and uncertainty, and he is now a part of that beautiful rose. I have faith that he now lives in the love that Dante was so certain existed, and I hope that God will keep him safe there for me until I see him again.
I'm back. The first speech was a little difficult, so this one I'm feeling a little better. But, before Zach passed, I remember crying once as an adult. And it was actually because I thought I had disappointed him and failed him in some way. This is just a 20-year-old confused, but he was like this big, goofy Zeus in our family. He was loud, obnoxious, and coarse on the outside, but then somehow loving, thoughtful, and soft on the inside. Together, we formed sort of a yin-yang, one balanced the other. Him screaming and then me suddenly quiet. And if my mom planted the seed for becoming a medical professional, I would say that Zach grew that seed. My sisters and I couldn't help but follow him. Tess, like she said, followed him directly in his footsteps and became a doctor. Susanna and I, we took a different route, but in the end, we couldn't avoid it. We returned to college, just like she said, and we wanted to be close to Zach. We wanted to work with him in healthcare, and we wanted to make him proud. There are too many stories to tell about Zach. You've already heard so many, but we can tell more at the reception and many days to come. I can give you a little insight for now, such as when he wanted to propose to Jen, he worded it as, "Hey, Elliot, I was thinking about keeping Jen." And I had to stop and be like, "Are you saying you want to get married?" He's, "Yeah." He's the kind of guy who convinces his introverted brother to join his fraternity and then just watch it take out like a petri dish to see what will happen. He's the guy who's self-conscious about his body, but then still finds it necessary to moon his entire family from a separate vehicle while we're driving down the highway on a family vacation. He's the kind of guy who says he didn't do well on the MCAT, he doesn't know anything, he's not going to be anyone. And then he dominates the MCAT, becomes teaching resident of the year, becomes the best doctor that everyone's ever known. And then only to eat fast food, drink nonstop Diet Mountain Dew, and never go to the doctor himself. He's also the kind of guy who wouldn't go to the dentist, but somehow had the most beautiful smile. He's the guy who's unquestionably straight, yet somehow had a very questionable bromance with Chucky. Chucky. He's the guy who wants to drive so I don't have to when we go skiing, then locks the doors, farts, and smiles at me. He says kids are just money pits, you don't want those. And then constantly plays with everybody else's children. He would come over to work out and say he needs to stay in shape and eat better. And then eat the cream from the Oreo cookies in my pantry and put the cookies back in. And he was so scared of heights, but he did leave us on the edge of a cliff. Zach was imperfectly perfect. He lived to make others laugh. And I find it appropriate and incredibly lucky that my brother and my best friend of 37 years would turn out to be the greatest man I ever knew. And thank you.
For those that might not know me, I'm Jen Stamile. Zach was my husband. I'm going to try to get through reading this. Thank you all for being here today to honor and celebrate Zach's life with us. The love and support that has been shown to all of us has been incredible, and we could not do this without you. We had no warning. We never saw this coming. And we still have no answers. To lose Zach would have already been devastating enough. But to lose him in this manner is just unbearable. The not knowing is all-consuming. There's endless unanswered questions. Zach saved so many people. It was the light that they needed in their darkness, in their darkest moments. And he would have had an entire army to help him fight any battle at a moment's notice. But we were unaware that this battle was taking place. Please let someone know if you are suffering. You're worth it. Zach deserved to live. He should be here. No one deserves to lose their loved one like this. He deserves so much better than this. Even in death, Zach would want to continue to save people. So please reach out if you're in need of help. Let your people know. Don't suffer in silence. Give yourself and your loved ones a chance, because we would give anything to have had that chance. Zach, 11 days ago, you decided to walk out of our house, leading me to believe that you would be right back, when it seems you had no intention of ever returning. I had no clue that brief interaction would be our last, and that I would never see you again. I don't understand why you left us, and probably never will. I wish I would have known something, anything. I wish you could have talked to me. I love you. I always have and always will. I miss you so much, it's impossible to describe. And it breaks my heart to think about how much you must have been hurting to do what you did. You were looking forward to so much. You worked so hard. We had so much left to do, so much life to live together. I wish there would have been something that made you seek help. I hope your death can help someone else. I know that is what you would want, to help other people, just like you always did when you were here. You always sucked at goodbyes. You would always just randomly leave and not tell anyone, and piss everyone off when they would notice you never came back. I would find you asleep or playing computer games. I wish that was the case, but instead, I hope you are at peace, and will look forward to you greeting me with "My Charles" again when I see you. And the house feels so empty. Me and the dogs miss you in it.
Thank you, Jen and family, for sharing Zach and this time with us. You've honored your brother and your husband and your son and your friend, and it's holy. We're grateful to be in this place together. The family doesn't want this to end in this way. This is the beginning of a conversation. We'll have a reception right after this, after I have a closing benediction where we can go share stories and share food. I think hopefully there's going to be a flyover, I believe, the medical helicopter, if we can get the timing right, out on the balcony over here. I'm left with a feeling of an impression that Zach's life was a libation. I think of ancients who poured out fine wine in a religious festival, a poured out sacrifice. And it feels to me that Zach poured his life out as a sacrifice. And it also feels to me like maybe for him it might be more like a 40 ounce and a beer for his homies. But there gets this sense that we were, this community was blessed to experience the divine light and the humanity of Zach Stamile. It's holy. And we belong together. So let me pray a benediction over us, and then we'll go right out here if you'd like to hang as long as you want and share stories and have some snacks. God, thank you so much for Zach. Thank you for words of truth that were shared and memories. Thank you that death gives birth to beauty. Thank you for Dante's beatific vision of light and love and hope. Thank you for love. Thank you for being love. Thank you for loving Zach. Be with us now as we suffer and love and celebrate. In your name, amen. Yeah, feel free to just head right out those doors over there. You can also walk around if you need to use the restroom or grab your kids and go out to the outside doors there. Thank you so much for coming.